So I just want to start off saying hello and welcome to everyone. My name is Naomi Torres-Velez, and I am the Library Associate at the New Jersey State Library. And today with me, I have Andrea Lewandowski, and she's the Library Consultant for Business Development and Technology at the New Jersey State Library. So we're really happy to be here today with you all. So today's webinar will provide an overview of ReferenceUSA for library staff. And we're really happy to have Bill Carlson from Info Group as our presenter. We really hope that you all learned something and are able to help your library patrons through this. And before we get started, I just wanted to remind everyone that you guys are all muted and your microphones are going to be disabled for this webinar. So if you do have any questions, feel free to use the chat or the question and answer box. We'll be stopping every here and there so that we can answer them for you. Again, we may answer your question privately, or we may say it while Bill has paused after speaking. But we just, also this webinar is going to be recorded and we'll be sharing the link later after the webinar has ended. So for now, I'm just going to turn everything over to Bill.
Thanks so much, Naomi, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning. You know, it's always exciting. Gosh, the state of New Jersey uses the database so frequently. I hear a lot from New Jersey patrons, of course, answering questions for them that they might have, some unique kinds of things. So I'm certainly, I feel fortunate that I can share my insights with you about ReferenceUSA. I've been with ReferenceUSA for now 12 years, and I was doing some research the other day and came upon some insight about ReferenceUSA in terms of when it first began. So the very first edition of ReferenceUSA started in 1992. Our company, Info Group, at that time was 20 years old. And so it's been lucky for me that I've been able to be a part of a lot of the enhancements and changes that have happened with ReferenceUSA. And certainly want to be able to share some of the insights that I have about the database, how I understand patrons to use it. And really the nice thing about the database is no matter which of the modules you might be using, they all pretty much search the same way. It's different criteria, but the processes that support all those searches is the same across all of those modules. Now you will find, and you've probably noticed if you've gone into all of the modules, that there are some tools that aren't necessarily available in all of them. And I'll certainly try and cover that with you, and we'll also provide my contact information that if at some point in time, a week from now or a month from now, you have questions and wanted to reach out to me, you could certainly do so. I would be happy to hear from you. A couple of housekeeping items I do want to cover real quick. The ReferenceUSA logo in the upper right hand, excuse me, my other right hand, the left hand corner is our home key. So whenever you needed to move from one module to another, that would be the home key to do it. Under the About Us, there is a 3.5-minute presentation that walks you through how we gather our data and verify that data. So if you would like to watch that or even point a patron to that, you could certainly do so. And then we also have our contact information under there. We do take phone calls and respond to emails. So our hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. But we would certainly respond to, you know, if somebody sends something in overnight, obviously we'll respond to them the following business morning. And then we also have our Learning Center. So a lot of patrons learn how to use the database by attending some of our webinars. We offer webinars currently on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and the topics vary. So you could certainly direct a patron that direction, or even a new staff member. We do have some YouTube videos out there as well, anywhere from 2 to 3 minute little snippets on how to use the database or certain tools in the database, all the way up to 30 and 60-minute canned webinars. And then we have some great training guides that really, if a patron or a staff member would appreciate kind of having the ABCs of how to search the database, there are some terrific opportunities there in those training guides. So certainly take advantage of any of that information. And then I also like to point out, a lot of times here are all those modules, and a lot of times patrons never really go beyond this. And if they stop here, they're going to miss our personal accounts. And I do like to mention the personal accounts. Once that patron has registered, they would be able to log in. It's not by any means a shortcut. In fact, it's additional steps, right, to get there. But once they have done so, if they prefer not to necessarily download information or print information off, but wanted to save a search, they could certainly do so under their personal account. And then they can get back to that whenever they would like. Those save searches we're actually saving the steps that they took to build that search. So if in the event that they come back to a search, maybe they save some business records and they come back to that search 8 weeks later. Well, that would have gone through 8 updates in 2 months' time. So, because we update that US business information every Thursday into Friday morning. So the numbers may change. They may see more or in some cases fewer records. So speaking of the updates, this is updated weekly. Our historical business information is updated technically at the end of every year. Our Canadian business information is every month. Jobs and internships, this gets updated every night. This is our partnership with Indeed.com. And what they do is they send us a feed of all the job openings that they have across the US. And then we look to match those job openings or those internships with one of our business records, so that the end user not only has the information about the job opening, but they also get information about that business, so that in the event that they are selected for an interview, they're going to be well educated about that company and even about that industry if they want to go into detail and depth about those types of companies in that industry. So all of that is in the jobs and internships. Our new business, our US new business filings, so that's coming in through the Secretary of State's office. That information is being updated every week. It's very crude information at that time because we haven't verified them yet. So we're getting the name of the business, maybe or maybe not an address. We're getting perhaps a phone number, maybe not, type of business, doing business as, etc. But we've not verified that business record yet. So it's not nearly as complete as what you see in the US business database. So this is being updated every week. Our US healthcare, that's being updated every month. And really, you can find in the US business database, you can find address level data about that particular dentist's office and how many employees they may have there, the type of dentistry, etc. In the US healthcare, if you're looking up a doc or a dentist, you're going to find out about where they went to school, how many patients do they see, do they accept Medicaid or Medicare, are they accepting new patients? So there's much more detail about the dentist or about the doctor in the US healthcare. That's being updated every month. Our standard white pages every month, as is the consumer lifestyles and the Canadian white pages. Our US new movers and new homeowners, this is being updated every week. So we're fully licensed to brush our database up against the national change of address. And that's how we learn about that move information. So I'll show you some different ways that this might be used gosh, especially now with businesses preparing to reopen, what business doesn't want to know about new potential customers in their area? So I'll show you how that could work for them. I'm going to launch the US Business Database first. The tools that I talk about, most of them are available in the US Business Database and many of these other modules. I would say that, as I mentioned with the personalized accounts, they can save that data, although you can't save the jobs and internship information. But there is a workaround for that. The end user, that job seeker, can email their findings to themselves. So they can technically still kind of save the data. I'll go ahead and open the US Business Database, and no matter which module we come into, we're always going to be presented with the quick search screen first. Great for finding maybe a particular company, maybe someone worked with an executive and that executive has moved on and they want to try and find that executive again. You could try a first name, last name search in whatever city and state. We could look at all businesses within a given city or state, or even do a reverse phone number lookup. When I take a call from patrons and they're telling me, and this happens frequently, they're telling me that they want to make some contacts, sales contacts with folks that they're going to look up in the database, some of the big is, and I ask them who their best customers are currently. And then I ask them, do you know their primary line of business? And the reason I'm asking that question is because all of our business records are in fact categorized by the standard industrial classification code that they're under, the SIC code that they're under. So if that patron understands or knows that business's primary line of business, then we would go immediately to advanced search and do a search for that type of business. But if they don't, I encourage them, let's look up that one of those really good customers and identify what their primary line of business is. And then we can use that to go into the advanced search to do a broader search and try and find more customers like them. So great way to use company name, but in some cases they just want to look up one single company, and that's fine too. I do want to show you this tool that I'm going to launch from the quick search page once I get my results, and I'm just going to pull up my community of Omaha, Nebraska. And I want to point out, but I must spell Omaha correctly. I want to point out this tool because this could be useful in a couple of different ways. And when looking at the entire community, how do you make sense of what types of businesses there are across the community that might make up, in this case, it'll show me the top 7 industry classifications across my community. So I have 29,000 results across Omaha, and this chart feature can be deployed, and what it will do is it'll identify those top 7 SIC codes across my community. So there's that SIC code being identified. I could change it up to the NAICS codes, which is the North American Industrial Classification System. I like to point people towards the SIC codes because they're more granular. And I tell government folks that I work with, maybe chambers of commerce or economic development, oftentimes they have to use the NAICS codes. I'll tell them, go ahead and use the SIC code in our database, and then cite, if you're making a report, cite the appropriate NAICS code that should go along with it. So in my community, the top 7 are physicians and surgeons, of which there are over 3,600 of them, and they're You have to remember, doctors and dentists are truly all 1099 guys and gals. They are their own business. That's why there are so many of them in my community, because we have several medical facilities across the city. Followed by, in this case, restaurants, attorneys, nurse practitioners, dentists, insurance, and I like to point this one out. Here we also have, you may not have seen, but we have automated teller machine records in our database. And I'll show you in another example how you can exclude, if you did not want this output in your results, how you could exclude them from those results. And if you scroll down, you'll also see a full report based on the SIC codes. Look, it's 112 pages in length. A full report of all the SIC codes that make up those businesses across my city. I can, if I want to, I could print this off, or I could make it part of a PowerPoint presentation. I know for a fact, because I've done many presentations in person, and have in doing so, there have been bank loan officers that have attended the programs because they use the database to try and find new business opportunities for themselves. And I've asked them if this type of insight is valuable in the loan process that person may go through with them, and they said absolutely. It's a great way to break down the information based on who you plan on selling your products to. Granted, we're looking at my entire community, but we could be looking at just a few specific industries as well. And I do want to point out, I've got all these other options here. I want to show you the number of employees. When we're making our verification phone calls out of Omaha here, we're asking those businesses, how many employees do you have? About 72% will tell us an exact number. Those that don't, we look at their peers in that area, and then we apply a range. So if you don't see an exact number, but rather a number of 5 to 9, for example, well, in that case, we applied that range. I'm going to deploy this employment size and look at across my community, and that this is made up of these 26,000 records. 1 to 4 employees is the top group at almost 60%, followed by 5 to 9, 10 to 19, you get the idea. Now I'll show you another example here in a moment, and I'll deploy this employment size as well. And let's look and see where the 1 to 4 falls in that particular industry. Again, printable or can be made part of a PowerPoint presentation. But in this case, I'm just going to go back to my results, and I'm going to do a new search, because we did this so easily just by putting in the city and state. We're going to use the database like most patrons are probably going to use it, and that's in the advanced search universe. By the way, additional filters goes to the same place. So now I have all these categories on the left-hand column. We'll always provide all of this information in every business record, but maybe I need some of these to drive in only the results that I want to see. So for example, this company name option here, it's a little different than what we saw with quick search, because quick search only produces one record. This option will allow me to select many records. If I wanted to say see 3 or 4 specific businesses, I could certainly do so. So if I wanted to see IBM, I could add that to my list, and then I could add, maybe I want to also see Starbucks. I could add that to my list as well. So it just depends on what I want to be able to see. I also received a call just last week from a patron who knew about the personal account, had created a personal account, and they were planning on saving their results. And so they produced their results, and there were 6 pages. And this particular person wanted to eyeball each of those records to make decisions about whether to maintain and keep that record or exclude it. So he did so and found that there, of those 6 pages, there were 4 specific records that he wanted to keep. He called in because he wasn't seeing a way where he could save just those 4. Because when you pull up your in his case, the 6 pages, the system doesn't allow you to select just a few records out of that 6 pages to ultimately save. It thinks you want that entire universe. So I had him write the names of those businesses down as they were noted in the database, and then close up that search, come back here and key in those 4 records one at a time, and then produce that list of those 4 and then save that. And he was appreciative that he wouldn't have to save all 6 pages because he really only needed those 4. So know that this is available, but otherwise we'll always give company name. We'll always give this executive information. However, maybe my business plan, maybe my approach is to only work with executives who are, in fact, owners. So if I need the owners, because that's one of those verification questions we ask, who's the owner or manager of that location? If we're provided that, then we note that on that record. And if I need to see only records with an owner present, I could do that. Or maybe I would also accept seeing a manager or speaking with a manager. So I could add both of those, and that way I'll get records that have either an owner available or a manager. And in some cases you might have both, and then they would obviously probably go with the highest ranking. So know that that's available. I'll come back to the SIC and the major industry group here in a second. I'll definitely show you this map-based search tool. This can be a great tool to use, especially if you're looking in an area that may not necessarily be defined by a standard boundary. A great tool to use because you can use a draw shape or a true radius option. So I'll show you this in a second. Obviously, we'll provide all of that phone information, but maybe I only want to see records with businesses that have a toll-free number. If that were the case, I could drive in those kinds of records. Business size, again, we're asking this question of those businesses when we call them. What is the number of employees that you have there? We don't ask them to define if they're full-time or part-time, just the total number. And as it relates to sales volume, we actually have an economist on staff, and she and her staff will actually build an algorithm to support the sales volumes as well as all the business expenditures. So we don't ask a small business how much they're making. Obviously, that would probably lead to the disconnect of that call. So we apply that algorithm. So that's an estimate of sales volumes. We always capture this ownership information. Maybe with my particular business plan, I don't want to see home-based businesses in my results. So if that were the case, I could select that and exclude those. Just depends on what I want to, or need in my list. If in fact I don't want those home-based businesses, I don't need to include them. Government offices, we're getting more phone calls about government offices because people are looking for chambers of commerce, economic development offices, certainly health departments, those kinds of questions. So if they want a government office, they can identify, do I need federal, state, county, or municipal, and then they'll get a complete listing, which they can go through pretty quickly to identify what it is that they actually need. So know that those records are all in there. So it's both, in case you were wondering, it's both for-profit and non-profit. The financial data will always capture that. You know, if it's a publicly traded company, we're going to capture that stock exchange data, ticker symbol. So we always have that on each record. And then these special selects. This can be certainly very valuable. Maybe in my business plan, I want to identify, maybe I'm looking at my peers, and I want to identify how many of them are there across my whatever geography, and how many of them are using Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. I could certainly do that, get that kind of insight. I do like to point out here with professionals, all or one, this is referring to doctors, dentists, CPAs, attorneys. If someone is, and they often do, they're using our data because they want to create a mailing list. And in some cases, they want to control their spend, right? They don't want to necessarily send out mail pieces to those individuals that they don't want to include. So if they're going to send out or create a list of businesses to mail to, and there are professionals on that list, they could choose to send to one doctor, the primary doctor at that location, or primary attorney at that location, and they could just identify that they want just one professional. And if there were 12 attorneys in that office, only one is going to receive that notice. So it can help them control that spend. So all of that's available, not to mention I can also exclude additional pieces of information. Maybe I showed you those ATMs that happen to come up here in Omaha. If I didn't want ATMs in my output, I could certainly include that and then find it. It's going to be listed right here. I click on it, add it to my selected field, and I could add other things. We also have kiosks, so if you didn't want a kiosk in there, you could do that as well. I often refer to red boxes. Some folks that I've done programs with in New Jersey weren't familiar with red boxes. That's those DVD stations that you can go and rent the latest movies. So if you didn't want those output, you could add that to the list as well. And notice it always defaults to the verified records. And the same thing is true when I'm in quick search. I only have verified records available. I always encourage folks to consider using the unverifieds. Those are simply records that could have been verified at one point in time. And then when we went to call them back, which we do annually, we weren't able to get a hold of them. And we will try for 2 consecutive years, a total of 12 times, to reach that business over that 2-year time frame. If we're not able to get them verified, then we'll move them into that unverified. They may still well be in business. We just haven't been able to get a hold of them. So certainly they can add the unverifieds to their list and maybe do some eyeballing because they know their community, do some information review, and then decide to either include or exclude them. And of course, close businesses if somebody needed to see those. I'm going to do just a keyword search. And I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm just going to do restaurants because there are so many. And I'm going to look across my community. You could certainly be doing this in any community in the United States. I know that we get a lot of folks that certainly live in New Jersey, but spend the winters down south in Florida, and they're using the database there. I'm going to do a county search. So I'm going to pull up all restaurants in my county. So first I have to select the state. And then, of course, I can start keying in my county, and the system will type ahead and let me get to that. I'm going to update my count because this is my total count of verified businesses. Notice I have 1,207 restaurants across my county, and we're searching only, we're searching all SIC codes as it relates to restaurants. If I select only primary, watch what this does to my number. It drops it down to 885. And at the outset, I mentioned that person that might be using the database that wants to look up that company that is a really good customer of theirs. That's exactly why they're going to do that, because they're going to look for that primary SIC code and then try and find more businesses like them. I'm going to go ahead and view those results. And since we just did this chart option a moment ago, I'm going to present that real quick. So this is, since we're only looking at one industry, it's not going to give me the top 7 SIC codes because there's only the one. So what it will do is, in this case, it gives me the top 7 cities around my community. So across that county, I have 853 in Omaha, followed by Elkhorn, Waterloo, etc. Again, I can print this off or make that part of a PowerPoint presentation. I do get a more complete report listed down here. And I can also, let's look at this employment size. Remember, 1 to 4 was by far tops across my community as it related to looking at all businesses. Let's do it now for just restaurants. So look at there, 5 to 9 is in fact the largest group at over 40%, followed by that 20 to 49, then 10 to 19, and then there's that 1 to 4. So it's a great way if somebody is looking at a particular industry and they want to get a sense of size. This is a great way to do that. We could certainly overlay sales volumes as well if we wanted. And then, of course, I get a more full report down here. So that is a quick review of the charts. I also have this feature, which helps to make sense. I mentioned the loan officers earlier. I do know that they like this heat map because it brings life to these results. It's one thing to say, gosh, I've got all these restaurants and have this all on Excel. It's another to view it from the map perspective. So this heat map will give me that kind of insight. Where you have the red, there are a lot of restaurants in those areas. Where there's more yellow, fewer. And then where it's green, on the periphery of all this, there's fewer restaurants in that area, in those areas. So this is my entire county. As you can see, it kind of comes up this way and down over here. My entire county, and it does note here, if I change the view to on my map to where it's less than 300 records, what it will do is give me a pinpoint listing. So let's do that real quick. I'll drill in a couple of times. Nope, it's going to be 3 times. And then it starts to pinpoint all those locations. It gives me this legend on the far side here with all of those businesses. Now, if I don't know, for example, where this Olive Garden is, I can click on the name of that, and then it shows me that on the map. And if there's a plus symbol, like there is here, it simply means that there's 2 results there. One for the Mexican restaurant and then this barbecue pit. So just depends on what you need to be able to do. This is all printable or can be made part of a PowerPoint presentation. I'd of course get the top, in this case, the top 50 zip codes across my community made available to me as well. So all of that's under the heat map. If your results are fewer than that 300 and you deploy the heat map, it'll always give you this view. Of course, it won't give you that density look. I'm going to stop there for just a second to see if there might be any questions, and then we'll talk about downloading the information, because that's what a lot of patrons will ultimately do.
So we do have one question. It is from Lisa Kelly, and the question is, are the personal accounts free?
Absolutely, yes. And they can save as many searches as they want. There's no limit to that, but yes, they are definitely free. There's no charge. The only thing if you'll note here, it says I've got these 885 results, and then it says 54 of those come with email addresses, and it says more info. When you select that, it brings up this window and it talks about that we sell that information. You could imagine if we had everybody's email address out here available. Imagine how quickly those email addresses would become sour. So we do sell them, and we sell them in two different methods. One is they can just buy the list and walk away with it and do whatever kind of marketing they want to do with that. That can be awfully dangerous because you could end up marked as spam and then not be able to deploy other emails. Or they can allow us to do the deployment on their behalf. So those are the two ways, and that's the only time that there could be a charge from info group for something that a person might do in ReferenceUSA. Great question. Other questions?
There's a question in the Q&A box that asks, in your restaurant search for Omaha, could you include counties from other states for interstate metropolitan areas?
Sure. Excellent question. You bet is the answer. If where I live in Omaha, right across the river is the state of Iowa. So if I wanted to include that county, I could have changed up the search from, let me do that. I could have added, I've got my Douglas County, Nebraska here, but I could have added Iowa here, and that county happens to be Pottawatomie. So I could add Pottawatomie County and then get those results included. So yes, most definitely. I could even add, if I wanted to, I could add a city and state. So let's say, gosh, right up the road from here is a community that is, about 100 miles north, and it's Sioux City, Iowa. If I wanted to, I could add just that city as well and then get those results included. So you really get to be the driver here and can make this as unique or as different as you want it to be. Great question. I'll remove Sioux City and I'll remove Pottawatomie from those results. Any other questions?
There's a question from Eric Schwartz that says, can you explain the difference between searching for restaurants by primary SIC code and all SIC codes? What type of businesses would be under the non-primary SIC codes for restaurants?
Excellent question. Think about in your community the businesses that have a restaurant in them, but their primary line of business isn't a restaurant. Say, for example, a bowling alley. Bowling alleys all have little restaurants in them, and they serve, whatever, hot dogs or tacos or whatever it might be. I've tried several different cuisines at the bowling alley, and none of them have made me bowl better. So if they could come up with something for that, they would have a hit. Well, I guess it'd be a strike. So it would get rid of businesses like bowling alleys. It would get rid of businesses like convenience stores that also have a little restaurant in them. It would get rid of businesses that, for example, movie theaters that offer a dining experience. It takes them out of the mix. So when you're looking at the primary, it's just those businesses whose primary identified line of business is that of, in this case, a restaurant. A good one to think about is Walmart. Walmart has everything. I don't know if they have kitchen sinks there, but they have pharmacy, they have automotive, they have electronics, they have clothing, of course, groceries, and that's their primary line of business. But they have all those other types of businesses under their umbrella. Great question. Other questions?
For now, I don't see any more questions, but as the time comes on, they'll probably pop in.
You bet. Keep asking. I really appreciate your questions. I want to talk about downloading. So as you'll notice, it indicates down here how many prints and downloads you can do per search. So it mentions 100 here, and that doesn't mean that they get 100 per day or 100 per week. It's 100 at a time. So they can take out several hundred if they want to. It's all up to them. And the way you do that is, if they want all the records per page, you simply come up to this empty box next to company name and that blue bar and click there. It grabs all 25 records. And then you advance to page 2, repeat that step, page 3, repeat that step, page 4. Now I'm at my 100 records, and then I can simply go over to download, or I can print those off. And with download, it gives me these several options here. Comma delimited is the most user-friendly as it relates to making mailing labels. So I tell folks, you know, it still drops it into a form of Excel. Go ahead and use it like that. Summary would include this information, and some of the additional data fields would include that owner name, their title, number of employees, sales volumes, line of business, secondary line of business, their IUSA number. We have our own numbering system, so it includes that. So it'll include a lot of information. If it's detailed, which this is a bit of overkill, I know some researchers want all of that data, but otherwise for the average Joe that is going to use this for marketing purposes, probably they're not going to want everything. And then, of course, custom would allow them to do just that, customize it. This is what it looks like for my summary. And I always encourage the patrons that I talk to, if you're going to be downloading a lot of records, then I would open up your own version of Excel, because my pages are all static. And they can adjust these cells later after they have done all their downloads so that they can see the company name in its entirety, etc. But I encourage them to simply go right up here to that upper left-hand corner and do a copy and paste. And they can drop it into their version of Excel, and then they would minimize theirs, close mine, and then it brings you right back here. They simply go to the word back, and it brings them back to page 4. Now they need to deselect these check marks, otherwise they'll end up with the same list over and over again, and then they'll wonder why it's broken. Easiest way to do that is revise search. It doesn't forget how you built this search, and then view your results. It brings you back to page 1. And then all you have to do is go to this toggle box, type in page 5, hit enter, and you're ready to go with your next list of records. So certainly very user-friendly from that standpoint. If they're going to cherry pick, meaning just take this record and maybe this record and this record, and they're going to advance to another page and grab a few more of those records, etc. If they're going to cherry pick, they need to stop at the 4th page each time, even though they only may have a dozen records. They need to stop at that 4th page because it is page sensitive as well. Do that download and then come back, and they can follow that same step and revise the search and then view the results, and it will have cleared out all of those check marks. Then they just have to remember, what page did I leave off on? So they can cherry pick if they would like. I'm going to revise that and get that out of there. And I do want to show you this tool, and I'll go to the next page because I know that's where these guys are at. I want to show you this Arby's record. So if you'll notice, obviously we've got company name, that executive and street address information, and then this corporate tree. So I can switch this up if I wanted to, change this up to title and get a sense of who these executives are that are listed. I could do that real quick. but I want to show you this corporate tree structure. So with this, let's do this Arby's here. The up arrow will take me to one additional record, and that would be the subsidiary for all the Arby's. If there weren't a subsidiary, it would only take me to the corporate parent. This option shows me their entire organizational chart. So I can select that, and it brings me to this record. So Arby's, under Inspire Brands, is actually owned by this Rourke Capital Group, a private equity firm out of Atlanta, Georgia. It notes here that they have 37 subsidiaries and over 24,000 branches, so certainly a good-sized company. I do have a legend that runs across the top here, so if I didn't know what this PV stood for, I could quickly identify that's a private company. And if I want to see these other subsidiaries, it is as simple as scrolling down, and there is the beginning of those subsidiaries. So I'm sure that you recognize a lot of these companies on here. My car has a tendency to drive all by itself to this company. I'm sure that you recognize this company. Maybe Jamba Juice, Jimmy John's, Massage Envy, Meineke Car Care. So you can see that they have quite a diverse group of businesses under their umbrella. And if I wanted to get to these Sonic restaurant locations, I just click on this SU with the plus symbol. Wherever you see a plus symbol, that means there's more data. And you can click on that, and there are those Sonic locations. So I can get to this information pretty darn quickly. If I'm selling, if I'm looking to this Arby's, in this case, to sell some kind of product to them, it would be very useful to go and look at that corporate tree, as it notes here with this particular example. Not only do they have Arby's under their umbrella, but they have Sonic and Hardee's and a few others. So I might be able to expand my sales just by understanding this corporate structure. Or think about the job seeker that's come into the record because there's a job opening, and they see that information about the corporate structure. They can learn about that company and just be that much more prepared if they're in fact going in for an interview with that company. So some tremendous information, and you can get there really quickly. I can always go back. And I want to show you the Arby's record in case some of you are new and have never seen a record. This is how all the records are going to be set up as it relates to business records. And even for those nonprofits, obviously a nonprofit isn't going to have sales volumes and that type of information, but we will always give you their location information. If they have a website, if they use social links, we'll include that information where we have that. Job listings would be found right there. So if there were any listings here available, those would be right there. And that gets updated, as I mentioned, every night. So this record could in fact change come tomorrow. There's that corporate tree. So if I need access to that information, I can get right there as well. There's my industry profile and that SIC code, the NAICS codes. If I'm going to use this code, like I mentioned at the outset with that guy that's going to look for other really good customers like his current one, I would tell them, instruct them just to write down the number itself, forget the dash, just do all 6 numbers. And then they can use that in that keyword search field to search out more businesses like their really good customer. Where there's a business profile, definitely consume this information. There could be some valuable information that you would want to have at hand in your conversation, either as a job seeker or as a person perhaps trying to sell something. I do have Google Maps embedded in here. That can be printed off. Obviously, they can use the satellite view if they prefer. They can use that street view, so it just depends on what they might need. And then there's those business demographics. So look at those last updated on was in this last month. And when we contacted them, they told us they had 26 employees. Now, we don't ask them to define which are part, which are full-time, just that they have that number. As you can see, we also include that parent company information. There is, through Experian, you can buy access to any business's credit history. So if someone were looking to invest in a company or maybe buy a company, they could certainly launch this and then using that information purchase the data that's important to them before they perhaps get attorneys involved. Of course, we have hours of operation there, that management information, company news. This is information we get through Bing, and it gets updated daily. I've seen it where, so the last update on this was 5:30. I've seen it where I've come in the morning and it will have like a date of 5:30, and I'll come back in the afternoon doing another program, and it will have been updated to today's date. So this gets updated real time as Bing learns about and gets us that information. No stock data because they're not publicly traded. There are those business expenditures. And I even, well, here's an example. I was working with a person that's an accountant, and they were new out of school and they were looking at starting their own business. They didn't want to necessarily go in with an accounting firm. They wanted to see if they could do it on their own. So we were using the business expenditures for accounting, and he was selecting ranges as it related to those businesses that had certain dollar amount spends. And then he was going to reach out to those businesses to see if he could offer his accounting services to them. And this is queryable when you're in the advanced search. That is an area that the business expenditures is one that I could deploy and then select certain ranges as it relates to these values. So know that that's available. I also have some historical data followed by historical records. So if I wanted to go back to 2009 to look at this Arby's record back then, I could click on that and it brings me to that record. And notice, if that record goes back to 1997, I could take this slide and go all the way, or I could just click back here and go there. In this case, it only goes to 1998. So you can see how you could use that to kind of look at this business over time. I can also get this same information when I go into the U.S. Historical Business Database. That's what it's done, is it's linked me to that just for this one record. When I select back, it's going to take me back to my original listing. So know that that is available. And we do track, by the way, name changes. So if the name had changed with this business, we would capture that. Address changes, etc. We would capture all that. UCC filing, so if they've taken out some type of loan and then they had to put up some collateral, that would be listed there. The nearby businesses, because we have the latitude and longitude embedded in the background. In this case, it's not giving me any. It's been acting a little fickle lately. I bet you this doesn't provide any either. Yes, this morning it is not liking me. Generally speaking, when you deploy that, nearby businesses or competitors, in this case, we know we're only looking at other restaurants. But in nearby businesses, it would show me everything around that particular business. But for some reason, the linkage isn't working this morning. I do want to point out this data feedback button, which can be found here at the bottom of the record or at the very top. So we take crowdsourcing information. Let's say that that you knew this business and you know that manager of that particular location, and you were having a conversation and they happen to say, we've hired some more people, we now have 40 employees. You can tell us about that by selecting this data feedback, and patrons can do this as well. Select that number of employees, put in the 40 there, then complete this information, send us that email, and then we'll send you an email immediately that we received it, and we'll also send you a resolution email within 7 to 10 business days. So what that will do is that will cause us to call this business to verify that number of 40. Now, we don't tell them who told us that, but that we're going to verify that. And if they come back and say, no, we don't have 40 employees, we only have 36, then we're gonna change it up to 36 from that 26 and make that the number. So it just depends on what they give us at that point. So any record, whether it's a verified record or an unverified record, can be updated. I was doing a program similar to this out in Denver. There was a librarian that was in attendance, and while she was in the back of the room, she quickly looked up her daughter's record under the verified records and couldn't find her. She forgot about the unverified, so when we were done with class, she said, Bill, can you help me with this? I can't seem to find my daughter's information. So we looked a couple of different ways, because she was a sole attorney, and we looked using an address and phone number and couldn't find her. So then I brought in the unverified records, and we found her there under a different phone number. And the mother went into the data feedback and gave us the correct phone number that we call verified. It added her then to the verified. So unverifieds can be re-verified. Maybe it's a matter we've got a bad phone number. I can always get back to my list, and certainly if that's as far as I need to go, and now I'm done, I can either save this as it notes here, and when I save that, it's just going to ask me, well, I haven't created an account, so it's going to make me do that. But once I've done that, then I can save that, name it, and be able to get back to that list at any point in time. I'll break there for just a second, and let's see if there are any questions. This might be torture, considering we're doing this so close to the lunch hour. I apologize if it's causing anyone any difficulty.
We do have 2 questions. One of the questions is in the Q&A box, and it says, does the download offer work in the U.S. residential database?
Can you repeat that?
Yes. Does the download offer work in the U.S. residential database?
Does the download? Yes. So you can download records from any of our modules except for the jobs and internships. With that one, you have to email that to yourself. But yeah, the download functionality works in every module.
And our second question is, when you download the search, are your filters listed at the bottom of the exported data, or how do you keep track of what filters were used to get those exported results?
Yes. So since you're downloading, the download isn't keeping track of the filters that you used, other than, let's just grab a couple of these. And I'll just go right to that. I'll leave it in that summary and open that guy up. So in this case, the summary always produces the same information: company name, that executive information, address, etc. So that summary will never change. Now, if I'm doing it from, let me close this guy. If I'm doing a custom, it automatically gives me these fields. And by the way, I can save my selections. So let's say that I don't care about record type, whether it's verified or unverified, because I know I'm only looking at verified records. So I could take that one out, but maybe I want to add number of employees. So I can start to key that in, and I can select either that range or the actual. So if I need that information output, and that's all I want to do, I can set some defaults so that when I come back to do another group of downloads, I'll have this custom search all ready to go, and then it will produce just these pieces of information in my download. As far as saving the steps that you took to build the search, that has to be done in the save search, not in the download. Other questions?
There's one more question. Are the columns searchable alphabetically so you can see how many are on the same street or owned by the same executive, for example?
Absolutely. So I can go here. Let's say I want to look at this from street address, and I'll go back to my page 1. I want to look at this from street address and make it in ascending order. I can certainly do so, and then it will break that all up by that street address information. And by the way, let's say that I'm downloading, now I've got these 36 pages. Maybe I want to download 500 records. So 500 records would be a total of 20 pages. And I do them in groups of 4 at a time. So I would make my selection here, advance to my next page. It still leaves it in that ascending order. But once I've done that download and I go back to revise search and then come back into the results, it changes that back to its original format. So then I have to remember, click here to get that in ascending order again, and then I can start out on my page 5 if that's where I left off and be able to get that information. So I do need to be cognizant of changing this back, especially if I've gone to revise that search to get rid of all those check marks. Now I could still, maybe I'd selected all these records. I could still, when I came back, uncheck them one at a time. So that wouldn't change then that order. But if I go back as far as revising that search to get rid of all these check marks, then it's going to change that for me. Great question. And by the way, if you're ever in Omaha, Jimmy's Eggs, delicious. Other questions?
No more have popped up since the last one.
Okay, perfect. So I have a half hour left, roughly?
Yes,
Okay.
about half hour.
Okay, perfect. Let me do this. I'm going to revise this search. And remember, these tools are all available in all of those other modules. I do want to show you this map-based search tool. And since restaurants is going to produce so many, I could be adding, I've got just one category, but if I wanted to add hotels, I could certainly do that. If I wanted to add dry cleaners, I could do that. I mean, I get to be the driver here. I get to be the one that decides what's seen. So I'll leave it like that. And I'm going to get rid of my county selection, and I'm going to put in some additional filters. So I'm going to say number of employees. So give me these employment numbers and give me those businesses that have web addresses. Or if I were someone that designed and web addresses, I'd want to look at those companies that don't have web addresses. That'd be my list that I was going to call on, right? So I'm going to go with only with web addresses, and then I'm going to deploy my map. With the map deployment, you always have to make your selections first in here. It doesn't toggle back and forth as easily when I'm using the map search tool as it does all of these other options. So you deploy the map last. And, I've helped patrons do this. Sometimes we put in their home address. Maybe they're a plumber and they're looking at other businesses that are in a particular geography around their home address. You can do that. You could put in a city, state, a county, state, a zip code. I'll just use my zip code. And I'll say go. You always have to tell it to go. And then it comes into, in this case, Omaha. I have all of these tools available to me. I can draw my own shape. I could do a true radius. I can use some predetermined boundaries, and I can even create a drive route. So maybe I need to draw a shape because my shape is unlike any boundary that you're going to find on any map. So here's my shape. I'm going to start. That's my shape. This is my unique, oops. So let me do this. I'm going to finish this. And I'm going to delete it real quick because I do want to show you this. Click on Draw Shape, and then it's one click to begin it. So wherever you want to start at is where you first click. And then one click, and then you pull it in whatever direction you want to go. Another click to change direction. So if I wanted to go up here, and then come over here, and then come over here, I could do that. And in that shape, once I double click to finish it, there are 114 results that match my criteria in that shape. I had a customer, it was a small business development center that were using our database, and he attended a training that I did and couldn't quite remember how we could draw a shape and then exclude an area. And he had a customer that he needed to exclude some information or an area. So to exclude, you could either do a true radius or you could draw your shape. I'll just draw. Let's say I'm going to start here and I'm going to include this area. And I'm going to double click to finish it. There are 31 results in this little square I made. I can double click in that square and it will give me the ability to exclude those 31 results. So I simply okay, and now it's going to, from that 114, it'll exclude those 31. And all I would need to do, let me pull this down a little bit, I can come up here and say done, and then it would give me, in this case now, my 83 results. So it can be that simple. I asked this person after I showed him how to do that, what we were excluding, and it was a cemetery. And he said that his customer was superstitious and did not want that cemetery included in the output. So we excluded it. So know that you can draw any kind of shape. You can also do a true radius. So if this were, let's say that were my address and I wanted to see, and you just click and hold it and then just drag it in away. So you could drag it up, you can drag it down, sideways, just depends on what you want to do. And you can see how it starts calculating the radius miles. So I'll go out 4 miles. Or close to 4. And I've got 193 records in that particular radius. If that's all I need, again, I simply say done, and then I view my results. I also have, and this might be useful for some of your patrons, these boundary selects. It starts off as big as the state, and it could get as close as a neighborhood or even a carrier route. let's overlay the zip codes, not quite so tiny. So it overlays all the zip codes in this case, and then all I have to do is double click in them. Oops, not double click, single click, but sometimes it takes two. Let me back up a little bit so it's not right on top of us. So I've got 56 in this area. I have 37 here. Maybe this is important to me. I've got 33 there. So I get to decide what I'm going to look at. And then if I want those 3 zip codes worth of data, I would simply say done, and then view my results, and I'd get those 126 records. And then if I wanted to, I could use that zip code listing and put that in ascending order, so I would come up with all of those in ascending order. So note that that's available. And I did mention drive route. I helped a gentleman from Wisconsin the other day, and I can select this, go back to, or return to my tools. And here's my drive route. I can launch that. I helped a gentleman in Wisconsin that was looking for certain types of manufacturers. And he wanted to drive along this interstate because that's where those manufacturers would be. And he said they would probably be within a 5-mile distance of the interstate because they want the on off ramps. So he gave me the name of the cities that we were to begin with, and I'll just do Omaha. And then the ending city that he was going to travel to. And I'll just do Lincoln, Nebraska. And if it didn't like this, it wouldn't turn green. It would actually give you a kind of a pinkish red color. And then I create the buffered. So how far out do I want to go off of center? Do I want to go a few blocks, or do I want to go, as it notes here, a maximum of 15 miles? If it's a few blocks, you always start with your point and then whatever your number is. So I'll say 0.5 for a half a mile on either side of the interstate. And then I simply create my route. There's my route, and there are 173 results along this route. So if I wanted that information and that's all I needed, I can say done, and then I can view my 173 records. And then if I wanted, I could actually put them back on the heat map. And that's exactly what this gentleman was going to do. It always starts off with the US view, and you have to click in it. It'll take about 5 or 6 clicks, but you can drill in and have that information all on the map. And what he was going to do, and in his case, there were 18 results, and he was planning on starting in his community and driving to this other community, and he was going to be cold calling on these businesses that manufacture or remanufacture skid pallets. He was going to try and talk them into selling him some of those because he had customers to sell them to. So notice how you also get that legend on the left-hand side, just like we saw before. So he wanted this exactly this way because he was planning on going to all those 18 locations. And I think we did a map. His drive distance was about 150 miles, he said. So neat way to be able to do that and have that on the map for you for a situation like that. Of course, can be printed off or made part of a PowerPoint. Let me go back. Got all that. Okay, I'm going to move off of the business database, but just want to check real quick to see if there are any final questions regarding the business data, and then I want to show you some of the other modules and these same tools that are available.
So right now there are no questions. Maybe we can just wait a little bit. Okay, wait, one just came in.
Ah, excellent. I see a 1 there. Yes.
Yes. So the question is, how small is the buffer on the map search?
How small is the buffer? It could be 1 block. So if If I were, let's say I'm using the database, the US business database, for my job search instead of the jobs module, because I train job seekers on how to use both the jobs module and the business database module. So let's say that I'm using this and I'm going to put in the address where I would pick up my bus and the address where I would be willing to travel to, could be a street corner, and I could tell the system, okay, I'm willing to walk from my bus and get off anywhere along this bus route. I'm willing to walk let's say 3 blocks. That's my tops. So I would do 0.3, and then it would give me all those businesses that matched my request. So if I was a cook and I wanted restaurants, it would look and identify all those restaurants along that bus route that would potentially be opportunities for me, because I'd have to look at those records one at a time to see if they had any job openings. Great question. So buffered route can be as little as 1 block.
There is another question that says in miles, and then in brackets, it's 0.001 equals 50 feet with a question mark.
Oh, you know, I've never tried that. It certainly, you might be able to do that. Let's just do this. I'm going to remove, let's see, did I have, I'm going to remove that because that won't let me. That's the thing about the map-based search tool. It's not as friendly. So I'm going to have to deploy it again. It doesn't forget any of that other information. And then I can put in that zip code because that's how I did it, and go, and then go to my drive route, and I'll do that Omaha again to Lincoln. And 0.001. It will accept it. So obviously this is going to be a but there are no results because I haven't gotten off the interstate or the street. So that would be awfully close. I would say 0.1 would probably get you what you want. You could try 0.005. I mean, you could play with that. Absolutely. I've never tried it so small. Other questions?
Would you touch on jobs and internships?
Absolutely. I am going to go back to the home page and see there, I'm touching on it. Oh, that's not what you meant. Let me launch that. So with the jobs and internships, again, I'm going to come to that same quick search page. In this example, I could do a job title, a keyword, or even a company name, and then look in any city, state, or zip code for opportunities. And I do like to point out fabulous job resources. I've spent oodles of time in here. This is through the Department of Labor, and there's just a wealth of information right here. As you can see, they cover a variety of different kinds of topics. And then they have all of these tools available. They have some videos, some of those top questions, some additional tools. They've got just a wealth of information here. So certainly encourage your patrons to take advantage of these various tools that are in the database. And there's a number of them here. But when I'm using this tool, most of the time people are going to go over to advanced search simply because it allows them to do more. So I could do a particular search using certain words, an exact phrase. Maybe I want sales training. I could do that, and then I can identify a company or not. in terms of job type, it could be full-time or all the way down to temporary. We do have those internships. So if you have those students that are looking for opportunities, that's there. I'll say full-time with the salary, and you've probably either heard this or seen this yourself when you've been helping patrons. A lot of times in Indeed, there aren't listings. And remember, Indeed aggregates from other various sources like Career Link, county posting sites, etc. So I encourage patrons, if you're going to use a salary, do that first, because it's going to limit the number of results you're going to see, simply because a lot of those listings don't have a salary. So they would want to do it with the salary first and then without, and they're going to have a much larger group when they do it without. And by the way, the maximum number of records that we would deploy in any search would be 1,025. In terms of location, it always defaults to 25 miles, but it could be within a mile or 100 miles. So let's just do 15 miles. Then, of course, you identify the city, state, or zip code, followed by age of job. So was it posted anytime, a long time ago, or since yesterday? So let's just do the last 3, well, we'll do the last 7 days. And I'll just put in my community. And I've got one opportunity that's come in those few days as it relates to that information that I requested about sales. So I can go to that job, but let's look at a few more. I want to give us more options. Let's do this. I produced this search the other day, and there were a number of those positions available. And I'll leave that the same. That'll still cover. Let's see in the last 7 days. So in the last 7 days, there are 179 results as it relates to nursing opportunities. So oh gosh, we have almost a match rate of 100%. And the reason I say that, the job listings through Indeed are these on the left-hand column. Those records of ours that match these records are here. So that's why it says company name, Nebraska Medical Center, CHI Health, Nebraska Methodist Hospital System, etc. Now notice there's a hyperlink to every one of these records except for this CVS Health retail. We could not make a match. Maybe there wasn't enough address information, or there were too many possible matches to produce the right one. So in any case, it didn't make a match. If they see those kinds of results and want to explore that business, I tell patrons, write the name of this business down as it's shown here, and then go back to our homepage and then launch the US business database, because then I could key in this company name. And I encourage them first, go through the rest of them. As it notes here, we have 8 pages. There might be some other ones that we weren't able to make a match with, like this one, or this one, or this one. So if that's the case, you could certainly go ahead and write those businesses down and then search for those using the US business database. But let me show you this. Let's go to this registered nurse. I'll launch that. So there's the Indeed listing for this registered nurse here at this Boys Town. It's the Boys Town National Research Hospital, but that's all it's going to give you. That and the location, right? There's no other information about this company. I can obviously go through this listing and see what's expected as it relates to the job responsibilities, required qualifications, etc. There is some information about Boys Town here. But now I can still leave this up and come back up to my tab and select Boys Town. So where was that registered? There it is. So I can click here on this business record, and then it's going to give you these various, because they've got a bunch of locations around town. As you can see, there's a few around the city of Omaha. Now, I did notice that it mentioned the research hospital. So I'm going to start with this one here. And this isn't it, because there's no link, there's no information regarding that particular job opening. So if that's the case, I can simply close that page. It brings me back here, and then I can go to my next one to see if it's that one. And you might have to look through several of those to find the right one, but you'll eventually get to that one that has that job listing, and then they can learn a little bit about that business. But here's the real creme de la creme, is they can launch their competitors and see those competitors, and also perhaps look at these records. Maybe there's a job opening at the CHI. They could launch that record and real quickly see if there's anything there or not, and then always go back. So they can go through any of these competitors real quick to see if there might be opportunities there. Not to mention, I'm going to garner that information so that I can use that in my interview if I get an interview with that particular company. So that is exactly how the two records look. You get that listing in the center here, which are our records, and the job opportunities that are available on this side. So the person that asked the question about, will you touch on the jobs and internships module, does that give you some good understanding of how the database can be used? And I did mention that they can email their results to themselves, so they can certainly do that. Well, I didn't select any records. Let me select a couple of records here. Then you can email that information to yourself and name it whatever you want to, so that when you get that email, you know what you've sent yourself. Questions?
At the moment, we don't have any that popped up, but maybe we can wait like a minute to see if anything pops up.
Oh, and I've got like 2 minutes before Let me show you this tool real quick. The new movers, new homeowners. You know, a library branch could be using this tool. Certainly a business could be using this tool. Maybe I want to find out about people who've moved into my community that are homeowners. So what I can do is I can select my community. I could even do a street address and do a radius around that if I wanted. I'll just say Omaha and go. When you're doing that city state, just type in the city, and then it will come up with the listing for all of them. And then I'll say move distance and time frame. So I'll say, show me people. I don't want to know about people who've moved over here from Council Bluffs, but I want to know about people who've moved from further out. So I'll say 50 miles all the way up to 2,000 miles. It always defaults to the last 6 months. Could be as recent as last week or within the last year. Let's look in the last 3 months, basically when we've been under this pandemic. And I have a total of 1,069 people who've moved into Omaha. Now I want to know about homeowners, because I have a landscaping business and I want to reach out to these homeowners about their landscaping needs. So I've got 28 results that are confirmed homeowners that I could reach out to. Let's take a look at David here. So here's all that address information. David moved from almost 1,400 miles away to come to Omaha. And then we've got some estimated home income, home value based on this census block information. So that's how my record is going to be set up. So if I have this particular type of, maybe I'm a contractor, maybe I paint homes. We know that people, when they move into a home, oftentimes they change something about that home, whether it's painting or remodeling of some sort. So if I'm a contractor, I'd love to know about these new folks. If we were closer to September, I would instruct you to put in the library's address and be able to do a search for new homeowners or even renters for that matter in around the library's address, and you could let them know about new library card member sign up month. Oh, and there are 5 questions. I hope let's go. Uh-oh, did I lose you?
So we have 3 questions. We have, are there any limits for the number of internship/job records emailed at one time?
Yes, 1,025. That's all the system will produce in any given search. But otherwise, there's no limit to what can be emailed.
And then we have, how have the results which are emailed to you arranged? Are they arranged in PDF, XLS files, or text data?
Let's do this. Did you see any questions regarding new movers, new homeowners? And if not, I'll just jump back there and show them what that's going to look like.
I don't see any questions
Okay.
popping up. Yeah.
I'm going to go back here and I'm going to do jobs and internships. I'll go to advanced search and I'll just do that nurse again. And I'll say full time. I'm going to shorten that a little bit. I'll do my zip in the last 7 days. 171. So let's say that I want these records and I'm going to email those to myself. And by the way, this is my email address if you'd like to reach out to me with any questions. It's bill.carlson@infogroup.com. So I'll add that. And then I'm going to send myself this list. It says they were successfully sent. I'm going to check my inbox real quick. And here it is. Oh, perfect. Let's see, I can launch this and I will drag this over so you can see how they're laid out. So that's exactly how that information comes across. Questions?
We do not have any new questions yet.
Okay. Well, it is that bewitching hour, unfortunately. I hope that this is giving you some great ideas about how the database could be used by your patrons. All of these modules search the same way that we've talked about, and many of the tools that I shared with the map-based search and the ability to put that on a heat map and chart it is available in those as well. I know that the healthcare does not offer the heat map or the charts, so you won't find that on there. It just won't be listed. It's not broken, it's just not listed as an option.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, I'm just going to finish off by saying thank you so much, Bill, for being here and teaching us all so much. And I want to thank you all for joining us today as well. If you check in the chat box, I posted the link to the evaluation form. This is also going to be emailed to you all afterwards, but this is just going to help us with feedback on this training and help us to guide when planning future learning opportunities. This webinar has also been recorded, and a link will be emailed to everyone who has registered for today. You will also receive contact information for Bill, Andrea, and myself. And as a reminder, if you all would like to sign up for Reference USA webinars for your library's patrons, you can also fill out the request form, which we will send out to you all. And for group, sadly, we'll not be able to visit New Jersey through the end of 2020, but we are fortunate that we have Bill's availability virtually. So again, you will all receive a follow-up email today. And once again, thank you all for joining us, and we hope that you have a really great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.